I like beige. Let's get that out of the way. Beige is fine. It's the color of oatmeal, nondescript sedans, and calm. It's the color of a man who just wants to grill a decent ribeye on a Saturday afternoon without being hassled. My house is beige. The house next to me is beige. The house across the street is a slightly different beige. A daring architectural choice known around here as sand versus our ecru. What I don't like is being forced to like beige. Welcome to the estates at Willow Creek, a place that sounds like a retirement home for wealthy horses, but is, in fact, a sprawling monument to suburban conformity in the middle of America. When my wife, Sarah, and I moved in, we signed a document thicker than a phone book. The covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the CC&Rs, the Suburban Bible. And in Willow Creek, Brenda Higgins was the Pope. Brenda was our HOA president. She was a woman who probably ironed her bed sheets and absolutely, 100%, color-coded her grocery lists. She didn't walk. She patrolled. Her weapon of choice was a clipboard, which she wielded with the smug authority of a mall cop who's just spotted a teenager on a skateboard. I'd seen her, with my own eyes, measure our neighbor Greg's lawn. Not with a guess. Not with a passing glance. She'd brought out a 6-inch plastic ruler, knelt on his driveway, and plunged it into his fescue. "Greg," she'd announced, her voice carrying across the silent street like a foghorn. "You're at 3¼ inches. Section 9.b is explicit. Turf grass height shall not exceed 3 inches. Greg, who was just trying to get his mail, looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a beige sedan. I was going to mow tomorrow, Brenda." "Tomorrow is not today, Greg," she'd said, making a sharp note on her clipboard. A snap of the pen. "The fine will be in your mailbox by 4. This was our leader, the beige-in-chief, and I had just given her a reason to exist. Our crime, you ask? We'd installed a new front door, a nice, solid oak number. And with a new door comes new house numbers. We're not animals, right? You get a new front door, you get new numbers. It's the law. Not Brenda's law, apparently. But, civilization. Sarah had picked them out. They were beautiful. Brushed nickel, about 6 inches tall, in this very tasteful, slightly italicized font. Classy, but not, I own a yacht classy. Just nice. We affixed them to the wall right next to the new door. We stepped back, admired our work, and agreed that it added, as Sarah put it, a touch of personality. That, right there, was our mistake. In Willow Creek, personality is a gateway drug to aesthetic chaos. A week later, I was checking the mail. It was the usual Tuesday haul, a 20% off coupon for a gutter service I didn't need, a credit card offer with an APR that looked more like a distress signal, and it. The envelope. You know the one. Crisp, heavy, cream-colored cardstock. In the top left corner, embossed in a severe font, was the logo for the estates at Willow Creek Homeowners Association. It was an image of a willow tree that looked less like a tree and more like a beige explosion. I sighed. I knew, with the certainty of a man who knows he's forgotten his anniversary, that this was not a welcome-to-the-neighborhood fruit basket. I walked inside, dropped the rest of the mail on the kitchen counter, and held up the envelope for Sarah to see. "Oh no," she said, putting down her coffee. "What did she get us for? The trash cans? Were they out past 8 a.m.? "Worse," I said. I tore it open. My hands were already clammy. It's formal. I unfolded the letter. It was addressed to Mr. David Henderson, occupant. Not even my full name, just occupant. Dear Mr. Henderson, I read aloud, my voice already taking on a sarcastic, bureaucratic tone. It has come to the attention of the Architectural Review Committee, which is just Brenda and two of her beige-clad minions, Sarah muttered, that the affixed numerals at your property, 4278 Willow Drive, do not comply with the standards set forth in the CC&Rs, Section 4A, subsection B. I paused, scanning the page for the actual violation. Sarah was leaning against the counter, one eyebrow raised. And? She prompted. I found the line. I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. They are, I said, holding back a laugh. Excessively ornate. Sarah blinked. Ornate? Did they use the word ornate? Verbatim, I confirmed. Excessively, as if moderately ornate would have been fine. Ornate? She repeated, walking to the front door and opening it, peering at the numbers as if seeing them for the first time. They're numbers, Dave. They're brushed nickel. They are not a Fabergé egg. Brenda seems to think they're one flourish away from being a full-on Vegas showgirl, I said, following her. I read the rest of the letter. We are hereby issuing a citation. A fine of $50, $50 has been assessed to your account. This fine will double for every seven-day period the violation remains unremedied. Doubling? Sarah shrieked. $50 for a font? It's not just a font, Sarah, I said, my voice heavy with mock gravity. It's a gateway. Today, it's italicized numbers. Tomorrow, we're painting the house purple and putting a car up on blocks in the front yard. It's aesthetic chaos. She's insane. She's in charge, I said grimly. I stormed outside onto the porch, Sarah right behind me. I stood there on my own lawn, in my beige house, in my beige neighborhood, and I stared at my perfectly normal, tasteful 6-inch house numbers. Ornate, I muttered, the word feeling like ash in my mouth. Just take them down, Dave, Sarah said, her voice weary. It's not worth it. Oh, I'm going to take them down, I said. The first spark of a truly terrible, wonderful idea was starting to smolder. But first, I'm appealing. I want to hear her say it to my face. I want her to look me in the eye and tell me my 4 is too sexy for this neighborhood. I looked at the numbers again. The 7 had a slight curve. The 8 was, well, it was an 8. Ornate, I said one more time, louder. Fine, I'll show her ornate. The HOA meeting was held, as always, in Brenda's 2-car garage. It was exactly as thrilling as it sounds. The room was meticulously organized, with gardening tools hanging on a pegboard in order of size. The air smelled strongly of fertilizer and self-importance. We all sat on folding metal chairs. It was me, Brenda, at the head of a card table, and her 2 acolytes, who I silently called Nod 1 and Nod 2. They were 2 women in matching beige cardigans, who seemed to exist solely to agree with whatever Brenda said. Next on the agenda, Brenda said, not looking up from her binder. The Henderson violation, 4278, non-compliant numerals. Brenda, I started, trying to keep my voice as reasonable as possible. Dave Henderson, I'm here to appeal that violation. I'm trying to understand what ornate means. I brought a picture. I held up a photo I'd printed. See? Standard font. Brushed nickel. It's not, dripping in rhinestones. It doesn't light up. Brenda finally looked up, peering at the photo over the top of her reading glasses. She didn't take the picture. David, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for a child who just tried to pay for candy with a leaf. The CCNRs are quite clear. Section 4.A, subsection B, states, and I quote, "All exterior affixed numerals shall be of a standard block font, non-serif. Color to be black, white, or neutral metallic." But they are a neutral metallic, I argued. And standard block is subjective. It's a 7. It has one curve. Are you anti-curve, Brenda? Nod 1 gasped. You don't get sassy at the garage meetings. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Your curlicues, Mr. Henderson, are a gateway. The rules are the only thing protecting this community from aesthetic chaos. First, it's fancy numbers. Next, it's pink flamingos. I hate pink flamingos, Brenda, I said, my patience starting to fray. I just want my mailman to be able to see the house. Then I suggest you use compliant numerals, she said flatly. Your 7 is stylized. Your 4 is open at the top. It's non-traditional. It's ornate. So what do you want? Times New Roman? Arial? Are we supposed to submit our numbers to you in triplicate before installation? The Architectural Review Committee, which is you, I cut in, has a pre-approved list of vendors and styles available upon request, she finished, her voice as cold as ice. Your appeal is denied. You have 7 days from the original citation to remedy the violation. As you are now at day 6, you have 24 hours before the fine doubles to $100, she banged a small beige gavel on the card table. Next item, the Miller's unpermitted bird bath. I sat there for a second, stunned. My internal monologue was furious. Aesthetic chaos? My 4 looks like a 4, not an interpretive dance move. It's a number! I stood up, the legs of the metal chair scraping loudly on the concrete floor. Brenda didn't even flinch. Fine, I said, loud enough for the nod squad to hear. You want standard block? You'll get standard block. I stormed out of the garage, the smell of fertilizer following me out into the oppressively calm, beige evening. This is insane, Sarah said, for what was probably the 20th time. We were standing in aisle 12 of the local Home Depot. We're being fined for font choice. Not just insane, honey, I said, scanning the endless racks of house numbers. It's non-compliant. Now help me find the most offensively boring numbers they have. The task was harder than it sounds. Most numbers had some element of design. A slight bevel, a hammered finish, a graceful, tapered edge. What about these? Sarah asked, holding up some black 5-inch aluminum ones. Too rounded, I said, shaking my head. That's a serif, or whimsical. That's another one of her words. Whimsical is a capital offense around here. We need something that looks like it was designed by a Soviet-era bureaucrat. And then, at the very bottom of the rack, I found them. Oh yes, I whispered. They were 3-inch, peel-and-stick, reflective plastic numbers, the kind of numbers you see on a public restroom stall or a motel room door that hasn't been updated since 1983. The font was a brutal, uncompromising block. The 4 was closed. The 7 was a sharp, 90-degree angle. They were, in a word, hideous. Dave, no, Sarah said, recoiling. They're awful. They're perfect, I said, a grim smile spreading across my face. They are an abomination, Sarah. They're an insult to 90-degree angles, but they are standard block. I bought them. Total cost, $8.99. I went home, and with a heavy heart and a scraper, I removed our beautiful, ornate, brushed nickel numbers. I then meticulously measured and affixed the new, plastic, soul-crushingly ugly ones. Per the rules, I placed them left of the portico. We stood back. They were tiny. They were reflective. They were aggressively compliant. "Well," Sarah said, trying to find the words. "They're not ornate. They're a crime against design, is what they are," I said. "But let's see Brenda find fault with these." A week passed. I paid the initial $50 fine, just to be done with it. We heard nothing. I felt a small, hollow victory. I'd won. I'd complied. My house now looked like a cut-rate bowling alley, but I was in the clear. Then, the next Tuesday, the cream-colored envelope appeared. I tore it open on the driveway. I didn't even wait to get inside. "Dear Mr. Henderson," I read, my hands shaking. "The committee has noted your compliance on font. We appreciate your prompt attention." Oh, thank God, I breathed. But there was another paragraph. "However," I continued reading, "it has been noted that the placement of the new numerals is in violation of Section 4.A, subsection C. Numerals must be affixed to the primary exterior wall, left of the portico, at a height not to exceed 6 feet from the foundation line. Yours have been measured at 6 feet, 2 inches. I looked up from the letter. I looked at my tiny, ugly plastic numbers. 6 feet, 2 inches. A new fine of $200, $200,000, has been assessed, reflecting the original $100,000 fine for the new violation, plus the $100,000 outstanding fine from the previous week's non-compliance, which was not remedied in time. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just started to laugh. It was a cold, quiet, slightly unhinged laugh. 2 inches. She had come back. With her ruler, she had measured my ugly, plastic peel-and-stick numbers. "She wants the numbers gone? Fine, they're gone," I said to myself. I walked into my garage, grabbed the paint scraper, and walked back to the front door. In 3 violent, satisfying scrapes, I ripped the plastic numbers off the wall. They left behind a sticky foam residue that immediately attracted a small cloud of gnats. "There," I said to the empty street. "No numbers. No problem." I'm not a smart man. I genuinely believed that having no numbers was a solution, a neutral act. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The next letter arrived a week later. I'd almost been waiting for it. I'd been watching the mailman's truck like a hawk. This time, the envelope felt heavier. "Dear Mr. Henderson, it has come to the attention of the committee that your property at 4278 Willow Drive is in violation of Section 4.A, subsection A. All properties must have numerals clearly visible from the street to ensure access for emergency services." I read on. My blood pressure was doing the mambo. "Your continued non-compliance has resulted in an additional fine. Your outstanding balance is now $400, $400. I collapsed onto the front steps, the letter clenched in my fist. I was in a trap. A beautifully constructed, beige, bureaucratic trap. Let's review. I can't have ornate numbers. I can't have compliant but ugly numbers placed 2 inches too high. And I can't have no numbers at all. I was in HOA prison. I was in a beige gulag of Brenda's design. She had me, and she knew it. I was going to be bled dry, $200 at a time, until I caved and installed whatever beige-approved, committee-sanctioned regulation font numerals she demanded. I sat there for a long time. The sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. save for the distant, rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of a sprinkler. I can't win, I muttered to the sticky residue on my wall. Unless I stop playing her game. I wasn't just an occupant. I was a homeowner. This was my house. And if she was going to force me to have numbers, then by God, I was going to have numbers. I was on my back deck, grilling, angrily. I find grilling to be very therapeutic, and the aggressive thwack of tongs on meat was the only thing keeping me sane. I was on the phone with my buddy, Mike. Mike is the opposite of me. He lives in an apartment downtown, pays a landlord he's never met, and thinks an HOA is some kind of new crypto. He is, in other words, the perfect enabler. $400? He yelled through the phone. For numbers? Dude, that's insane. That's what I said, I jabbed a bratwurst with unnecessary force. I'm trapped, Mike. I can't win. I'm so fed up I ought to just paint the damn things on the garage door in neon pink. Nah, man, Mike said, his voice thoughtful. She'll get you. Exterior wall, unapproved color. That's in the rule book for sure. I know, I grumbled, flipping a burger. I just need them to be visible. I'm so mad I want the mail plane to be able to see my address. I want aliens to see it. I want the International Space Station to know I live at 4278 Willow Drive. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The only sound was Mike, breathing. Dude. What? I said, annoyed. The roof, Mike said, his voice a reverent whisper. Do it on the roof. I stopped. My tongs, holding a perfectly seared hot dog, hovered in midair. What did you just say? The roof, man! She's got rules for walls, right? And fences and mailboxes. Does she have rules for the roof? The hot dog fell from the tongs, bounced off the grill, and landed on the deck where our dog, Buster, immediately inhaled it. I didn't even notice. I hung up on Mike. I didn't say goodbye. I sprinted from the deck, through the living room, and into my small home office. Sarah looked up from her laptop, startled. What's wrong? Is the grill on fire? The roof! I yelled, booting up my computer. The roof is on fire! No, I said, frantically clicking. The roof is the answer! I pulled up the 300-page PDF of the estates at Willow Creek CC&Rs, the digital version. I hit Ctrl+F. The search box appeared. My fingers flew. Roof. Beep. One result. Section 12. Maintenance. All roof surfaces must be maintained and kept in good repair, free of moss, algae, or visible damage. That was it. Maintenance. Nothing about aesthetics. I typed shingle. Beep, nothing. I typed sky. Beep, nothing. I typed chimney. Beep. One result. Chimneys must be cleaned annually. I scrolled manually, my eyes scanning Section 4, Exterior Appearances. It was all there. Walls, fascia, soffits, fences, mail receptacles, driveway surfaces. I read every single line. There is, I whispered, leaning in close to the screen. Nothing, not one word about the roof. It was uncharted territory. It was the high seas. It was international waters. Brenda's jurisdiction, her entire beige kingdom, ended at the gutter line. I slowly stood up, a wild, terrifying, glorious grin spreading across my face. I walked back into the living room. Sarah was watching me, a look of genuine concern on her face. Honey, I said, my voice trembling with giddy adrenaline. Do we have a 5-gallon bucket of white paint? Sarah's eyes went wide. She put her laptop down slowly. Dave, what did you do? Not yet, I said. already pulling my phone out to Google large-scale exterior painting. But it's going to be non-ornate. It turns out that I, personally, am not qualified to paint 20-foot-tall numbers on a 2-story asphalt roof. It's a safety and talent thing. I needed a professional. My journey to find a contractor was an experience. The next morning, I started making calls. The first call was to Polite Painters, a local company with good reviews. "Hi," I said, trying to sound as normal as possible. "I'm looking for a quote on an exterior paint job." "Great," said the cheerful voice on the other end. "Interior or exterior? Siding? Trim?" "Exterior," I said. "But, horizontal, not vertical." A pause. "Sir?" "The roof," I clarified. "I need my address painted on it, in white." A longer pause. "Like for a helicopter?" "Exactly," I said, seizing the excuse. "For visibility. It's an emergency services thing." "Sir, I think you have the wrong number. We don't do that." Click. The second call was to Reliable Roofing. "Reliable, this is Bill." "Hi, Bill. You guys do shingles, right?" "All day, every day. What can I do for you?" "I need you to write on them." "Write on them. Yeah, I need my address, 4278, painted on my roof. Big. Really big." Bill sighed, a long, suffering sound. "Sir, we do shingles. We replace them. We don't autograph them. It'll void the warranty. Call a sign guy." Click. He was right. I wasn't painting my house. I was making a sign. A very, very large sign. My third call was to Sully's Sign and Stencil. Their website looked like it was from 1998, and their main advertising photo was a high school football field they'd just lined. They were perfect. A gruff voice answered on the first ring. "Sully's." "Hi," I said, getting straight to the point. "I need numbers, on a roof, big ones, 20-footers. There was no pause, no confusion, just business. "Shingles or tile?" Sully asked. "Asphalt shingle," I said, my heart pounding. "Gonna need exterior grade, high adhesion traffic paint," Sully said. "The stuff they use on highways. It'll be $3,000, half up front. I don't ask questions. You don't watch me work. We in or we out?" "We are in, Sully," I said, practically shouting. "We are so in." "My guys are there Tuesday at 9, Sully said. Click. I hung up the phone. I had just spent $3,000 to win a $400 argument. It was the best money I had ever spent. I transferred the deposit. I told Sarah I was handling the number situation. I spent the next 2 days in a state of giddy, terrified anticipation. Tuesday morning, 9:00 a.m. A large, unmarked white truck pulled up. It was not a polite painter's van. This thing looked like it had seen battle. 2 men got out, Sully not among them. They didn't speak. They just unloaded giant, rolled-up stencils, a massive air compressor, and several 5-gallon buckets of paint. At 9:05 a.m., the compressor roared to life. It was significant. It sounded like a 747 was attempting to land in my driveway. At 9:10 a.m., my neighbor Greg poked his head out his front door, saw the men on my roof, and immediately went back inside. And at 9:15 a.m., as expected, Brenda Higgins appeared. She was on her front lawn, phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't yelling. She was just watching. Her face was a mask of cold fury. I gave her a little wave. She did not wave back. At 9:30 a.m., the squad car rolled up. A police officer, probably in his late 50s, got out of the car. He looked tired. He looked like he was 2 weeks from retirement and had seen everything. He slowly adjusted his belt and sauntered up my driveway. I met him on the front path, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "Morning, officer," I said. "Sir," he nodded. The compressor was still screaming. "We got a call about a disturbance and graffiti?" He was already annoyed to be here. "Morning, officer," I said calmly. "No graffiti, just a home improvement project, complying with local ordinances." The officer squinted up at my roof, where one of Sully's guys was laying out a giant stencil 4. "By painting a giant 4 on your house?" he asked, his voice flat. "It's my address, officer," I said, all innocence. 4278. The HOA was very insistent that my numbers be visible and compliant. They had an issue with my ornate 6-inch ones. A shadow of a smile flickered across the officer's face. He looked from me to the roof, and then across the street to Brenda, who was still on her lawn, phone in hand. "Your HOA," he said. It wasn't a question. "Brenda Higgins," I confirmed. "Over there, by the beige azaleas." "Ah," the officer said, a slow smile dawning. "Mrs. Higgins. We know her well. Got a call last week about an unpermitted bird bath over on Maple Court." "That's Greg's place," I said. "A real travesty, that bird bath." "Right," the officer said. He turned to his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, it's a civil matter. Property dispute. Show us clear." He turned back to me. "Sir, is that paint regulation?" I put my hand over my heart. "It's standard block font, officer. Non-serif, very compliant." The officer tipped his cap. "Carry on, sir. Just try to keep the compressor noise down before 8 a.m. "Will do, officer," I said. He sauntered back to his car, not even glancing at Brenda, and drove off. I looked across the street. Brenda was gone. Retreated. I think I may have actually fist-pumped. I went inside to get the work crew some water. The work took all day. The smell of high adhesion. Traffic paint is pungent. It's the smell of victory and volatile organic compounds. The neighborhood was, for the first time, alive. People were walking their dogs. People I didn't even know had dogs. Curtains were twitching. A few cars slowed down, the drivers pulling out their phones to take pictures. Mr. Henderson, the bird bath guy, was watering a patch of his lawn that was already a swamp. As I walked by, he gave me a slow, respectful nod. It was like a scene from a war movie. Sarah spent the day hiding in the living room, watching from behind the blinds. "Dave, the neighbors are filming," she said, her voice a mix of horror and amusement. "Good, let 'em," I said, pacing the driveway like an expectant father. "Tell them to use the hashtag #BeigeRebellion. Brenda will be able to see this from her high horse, or at least from Google Earth." "You're insane. You know that, right?" "What's insane, Sarah," I said, "is a 300-page document governing the font of a number. I'm the only sane one here. I'm just following the rules." "You're not following the rules, Dave. You found a crack in the rules and you're driving a tank through it." "Potato, potato," I said. At 4:00 p.m., the compressor shut down. The silence was deafening. One of Sully's guys, a man who hadn't said more than 2 words to me all day, walked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "All done, boss," he grunted. "That's one big-ass 4278. Won't peel for 10 years. Guaranteed." I paid him the other half in cash. They packed up their truck and, without another word, drove away. The street was empty. Quiet. "Well?" Sarah said, joining me on the driveway. "Let's see it." The problem was, we couldn't. From the ground, it was just white. You could see the edge of the 4 on the first slope of the roof, but the rest was hidden by the peak. I can't see it, I said, disappointed. Go to the end of the street, Sarah suggested. The cul-de-sac. It's higher. I walked, then jogged, down the block to the end of the cul-de-sac. I turned around. And I saw it. It was magnificent. It was glorious. It was massive. It was aggressively, beautifully, perfectly standard. 4, 2, 7, 8. Each numeral stark white against the dark gray shingles. They were crisp. They were clean. They were, without a shadow of a doubt, the most standard block font thing I had ever seen. I stood there for a full minute, just admiring. This was my Sistine Chapel. This was my masterpiece. I was still admiring my work from the cul-de-sac when I saw her. She wasn't walking. She was invading. Brenda was marching from her house, across her lawn, across the street, and straight up my driveway. Her clipboard was in hand, but she was holding it like a weapon, not a tool. This was her Operation Desert Beige. I walked slowly to meet her, positioning myself on my own driveway. My territory. She stopped about 5 feet from me. She was vibrating with a pure, distilled rage that I had only ever seen in cartoons. Her face was red. "David," she said. Her voice wasn't a yell. It was a low decibel shriek, like a tea kettle that was about to explode. "What is that?" I smiled, a calm, friendly, neighborly smile. "That, Brenda, is 4278, in a very standard block font, as per your request. You wanted visible, you got visible." "It's on the roof!" she screamed, finally losing her composure. "Is it?" I feigned surprise. "I could barely tell. I was just trying to comply. You said my other ones were too small, too ornate, too left. These are, by my estimation, 20 feet tall, non-ornate, and, well, they're not on the portico, are they?" "You are in violation!" she shrieked, fumbling with the papers on her clipboard. "I am fining you $1,000 for roof graffiti." "Roof graffiti," I repeated, savoring the term. "I love that. It's got a real ring to it. I'd love to pay that fine, Brenda. I really would. But I have a small question." I reached into my back pocket. I pulled out a folded, highlighted copy of the CC&Rs. Section 4. Exterior Appearances. "Could you just show me which section I'm violating?" I asked, unfolding the paper and holding it out. "I've been through it. Walls, yes. Fences? Absolutely. Driveways, mail receptacles, soffits. You've got soffits covered, B. But roofs, you guys seem to have missed that one. Big oversight. Really big." Brenda snatched the paper from my hand. Her eyes scanned the page, her finger tracing the highlighted lines I'd so helpfully provided. She read it. She read it again. The change was fascinating. The red, apoplectic rage drained from her face. It was replaced by a terrifying pale white. She was a machine, and I had just fed her a piece of data she could not compute. She had nothing. She sputtered. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No words came out. She looked from the paper to my smiling face, and then up to the roof, where the giant white 4 loomed over us like a judgment. She didn't say another word. She didn't hand me a fine. She just clutched her clipboard to her chest, turned on her sensible shoed heel, and speed-walked back to her beige fortress. It was the most beautiful victory of my entire life. The story, as you can imagine, became legendary. Within 48 hours, my house was a local landmark. We were the roof number house. People would drive by on weekends, slow down, and take pictures. The pizza delivery guy found the house in 30 seconds. "Easiest delivery of my life, man," he said, handing me the pizza. "I saw the 4 from the highway. No joke. That's awesome." A bored reporter from the local news channel showed up and did a segment. "Suburban spite. One man's fight against the HOA goes through the roof." My face was on the 6 o'clock news, much to Sarah's horror and my secret delight. The best part? The HOA was silent. For 2 weeks, I received no cream-colored envelopes, no fines, no letters, just a beautiful, blessed silence. Then, the letter from the lawyer came. It was full of bluster. "Cease and desist. Flagrant disregard. Blight on the community. Structure of an unpermitted sign." I was ready. I'd called Mike's cousin, a lawyer who worked pro bono for causes he found hilarious. My lawyer sent back a 1-sentence letter. "To whom it may concern, please cite the specific bylaw or statute in the governing CC&Rs of the estates at Willow Creek that Mr. Henderson is in violation of. Otherwise, cease contact." It was the perfect legal mic drop. We never heard from the lawyer again. Of course, Brenda couldn't let it stand. She was a creature of rules, and I had used her own rules against her. So she did the only thing she could. She decided to change them. A new notice was posted on the community bulletin board, a beige cork board, naturally. Emergency Bylaw Amendment Meeting Topic. Section 4.K. Roof Surfaces. They held it in the garage again. This time I went, and I brought popcorn. I sat in the back row. It was a kangaroo court. Brenda, her face still pale, proposed the new amendment. Section 4K. No paint, stain, or other coating shall be applied to any roof surface, visible or non-visible, other than standard shingle or tile color. No numerals, letters, or signs of any kind shall be permitted. It passed, of course. The Nod Squad voted aye so fast, I think they pulled a muscle. But here's the beautiful part. The catch. As I learned from Mike's cousin, the HOA bylaws have bylaws. And one of them, deep in the fine print, stated that any new amendment to the CC&Rs required a 60-day notice period for all homeowners before it could take effect. I raised my hand. "Yes, David?" Brenda said, her voice a low hiss. "Just a question on procedure, Brenda," I said, crunching a kernel. "This new rule, it takes effect in 60 days, right? As per Section 19.C of the bylaws?" I've never seen a clipboard snap in half before, but Brenda's did. For 60 glorious days, my roof was not just a masterpiece of spite. It was a 20-foot-tall, legally protected, 100% compliant monument to spite. I was the king of malicious compliance. I was the king of the roof. It's day 59. I'm on my lawn, grilling. The sun is setting, casting a lovely beige and orange glow over the neighborhood. The 4278 on my roof is so bright it almost looks like it's glowing. Sarah comes out and hands me a beer. "So," she says, sitting in the lawn chair next to me. "Big day tomorrow. You going to paint over it?" I take a long sip. "Probably. I mean, I made my point. Sully's giving me a quote for high adhesion black, which I assume is what they use to paint stealth bombers, should only cost another $1,000. It's a shame, Sarah says, looking up at the roof. I was getting used to them. It's how I give directions now. Yeah, just turn left at the giant 4278. You can't miss us, I chuckle. Yeah, well, we knew it couldn't last forever. I flip a steak. A perfect cross-hatched char. Besides, I say, I've got to save my energy for the next fight. Next fight? Dave, no. Oh, yeah. I point with my tongs toward Brenda's house. She's already sent me a pre-warning for unapproved grilling smoke aroma. Apparently, my hickory chips are olfactorily offensive. Sarah groans and puts her head in her hands. I'm thinking my next project, I say, a slow grin spreading across my face, is a 40-foot industrial-grade smokestack. I'll have to check the CC&Rs, but I'm pretty sure chimneys are covered, but not smokestacks. Sarah rolls her eyes, but I see her hiding a smile. You're a child, Dave. I'm an occupant, Sarah. An occupant with a dream. I look up at my roof, at the massive, beautiful temporary monument to my fight for the right to have slightly fancy numbers. I lost the battle over 6-inch nickel, but I won the war with 20-foot-high traffic paint. And in the beige suburbs, that's as close to a ticker-tape parade as a man can get. I turn back to the grill, and in the twilight, I wink up at the 8.